biggest thing in this election is who's going to stand up to President Trump. And is it we're going to send Pierre Poilievre or me to face President Trump in those negotiations?
This is a jaw-dropping report to be published by the Government of Canada. The report says that in 2040, more people may struggle to afford rent, bills, and groceries. On housing, in 2040, owning a home is not a realistic goal for many.
We got 5 days left. I didn't hear any bell. Did you guys hear a bell? This fight's not over. We're here fighting every single day. There's 5 days left in this thing. And people need to know who's going to fight for me.
Welcome back to Power Play. As the NDP, as you heard, there fights to hold on to the seats it has. The Liberals and Conservatives are fighting over the ballot box question. Is Trump fading from the minds of voters as the campaign enters its final stretch? Or is the trade war and who is best positioned to lead Canada through it still top of mind? Let's talk about that with our front bench. Sharon Carr is former Deputy Chief of Staff to former Finance Minister Bill Morneau. She's now a partner at Sovereign Advisory and advising the Liberal campaign. Jamie Ellerton is a Conservative strategist and the founder and principal of Conaptus. Former interim NDP National Director Carl Bélanger is with us. He's now the president of Traction Strategies. And Laura Stone is a Queen's Park reporter for the Globe and Mail. She rounds us out this evening. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. I want to pick up on the language employed by Jagmeet Singh today, because there's that clip and there's another one we're going to play later. Carl, what is your take on what, like, the bell hasn't rung, 5 more, like, what is your take on what the NDP is essentially trying to do right now?
Well, I mean, the other option is worse, right? The other option is to give up. It's over. We're done. So, of course, you got to fight till the very end, and you got to try to motivate your voter. And, you know, from what I understand is that the NDP Get Out the Vote operation, it was in very good shape over the Easter weekend for the advance polls. So they're confident in that regard. And, you know, we saw in Ontario that a Get Out the Vote operation can do wonders. In Ontario, in the provincial election, the NDP was 10 points behind the Liberals, but won twice as many seats. So the federal NDP is hoping not to win twice as many seats as the federal Liberals, but to win seats where people are discounting them.
Right.
And they're counting on their machine. And so Jagmeet Singh is going around the country motivating his base, but also motivating the volunteers, the people who will get those voters to the voting booth, and to try to win as many seats as possible and hold on to party status.
Do you have a gut feeling about whether or not that will be successful, just to follow up?
Well, it depends on how organic the vote will be. You know, what we saw during the advance polling, there was a lot of people, but the machines were in full, display. They were working really hard. Will they show up now on E-Day? That's the question. And the more organic it is, the less likely the NDP will be to be successful.
Sharon, I thought today, of all days, both Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Carney were like the most explicit about what their pitch is to voters and what they think the closing argument is. For Mr. Carney, it was experience, not experiments. For Mr. Poilievre, it was change, 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 change. Ultimately, how competitive do you think those two things are?
Well, I think they both can be right to a certain extent. When we talk about change, this is going to be a change election. What kind of change is that? I think for the Liberals, it's a change from the previous Liberal Party and somebody who is actually going to take on Donald Trump. For the Conservatives, they are pushing for a change campaign to change it from the Liberals. Whether or not that message is going to resonate, I think at the end of the day, the one and only message that everyone is truly focused at, even though we're not talking about it as much, is what does it mean to be working with Trump? We talk about affordability. The Conservatives have been out talking about affordability. And to state the obvious, every level of affordability is going to be impacted even more so with the constant threat of tariffs and the markets moving. So I think that the messages are kind of the same to a certain extent, but it's what kind of change do you want? And for, I think, the Liberals and for us, it's a change to make sure that we have a new Liberal Party with a new leader and are going to be there to fight Trump.
I sort of think there has been some evolution on the significance of Trump, Jamie, and I'd love to get your perspective as well. I feel like on the moments when he was right in our face on tariffs, it was a big deal. When Mark Carney was Prime Minister, people were thinking about it a lot. I would say in the last 10 days or so, I think the reason the Conservatives are getting more traction on their message around change is because people have the opportunity to even think about that more than, or at least the same as they were worried about our sovereignty, for example. Like, that is, I say that based on the feedback I get. I always refer to it on radio, where it was all about Trump the first 2 weeks of the campaign, and I'm getting tons of texts from viewers. We have like a text board who that message of change is like reminding them of how they felt last year.
I think that's partially right, Vashi. I think kind of what you saw, the biggest shift of this actually happened before the writ period. And the polls, although they fluctuated, have been fairly consistent. And so when Mark Carney became prime minister, embodied change by scrapping the carbon tax on day one in office and talking about some other things, including actually growing the economy. I would notice tout le monde on Parle appearance, where he said his biggest difference is he actually effectively cares about the economy, whereas implying that Justin Trudeau did not. He is trying to embody that, but I think the more that Trump has pushed to the back burner, the more I think you're looking at some more conventional dynamics that you've seen, and the Conservatives are chipping away a bit at that, but it is not enough to make the NDP relevant, and it looks like they've been unable to close that gap. And so this really, for the Conservatives here, I think in these dying days, are to perform as best you can, continue to chip away at people who have gone back to the Liberal fold, who just 3 months ago were wanting change, and continue to make the case as how Conservatives are going to deliver that. In addition to the change message, I don't think it's an accident that the kind of sub-theme they're really focusing on this week is crime and safety and the endorsement of union votes to try and consolidate it as much as they can.
Laura, you've been, I know, at some of the various rallies and campaign stops. What's your impression of how they're trying to close this out from a messaging perspective?
Well, I think certainly Donald Trump has not been as dominant in the second half of the campaign, and that's because he hasn't been talking about Canada's sovereignty as much. We haven't had any kind of manic episodes with threats of tariffs and pulling back and charts. I think he's always in the background, of course, in dealing with Canada, but I would agree that it's not as prevalent as it was. I think that the campaign is primarily about trust and which leader voters trust with all of these issues that we're talking about, you know, Canada's future, affordability, our own economy, and dealing with the United States and U.S. President Trump. So I think that's kind of the final pitch that we're seeing from all of the leaders is who do you want to tackle all of these issues, and kind of culminating with all of the platform releases. Certainly the Conservatives feel like they have a leg up on the message of change, and I think they're trying to walk a fine line between being a hopeful, positive party, the new face of Pierre Poilievre, literally smiling more, and trying to also kind of paint Canada as a dystopian hellscape. And we're seeing a lot of references to the government report that he's brought up for the past couple of days. So how is he trying to close this gap? I think he's trying to remind people perhaps of their dissatisfaction with the previous Liberal government, with the previous 10 years, without sounding too dour or too much of a downer, which I don't think Canadians want to hear right now.
Just really quickly, Sharon, I wanted to get your take. I just have a minute left. But I found also over the past few days, Mark Carney has been more like pointed towards, I don't know if that's too kind a word, but like very much going at Poilievre, more so than I had noticed throughout the rest of the campaign.
Well, listen, I think he's truly getting settled into that political role. He's very comfortable when it comes to talking about the economy, and we know that he is a new politician, and he is getting more comfortable on the political rhetoric that's going on out there. But I will just say is that we've been talking a lot about how the message has shifted and changed, and I've got to state the obvious here. We went through a period of time where all we were talking about was our sovereignty, getting annexed, our water, and being the 51st state, and governor this, governor that. And guess what? The message has changed because someone has been able to temper Donald Trump, and that somebody has been Mark Carney. So I think to a certain extent, yes, we are seeing a bit of a shift in the messaging and it being a change election. But what we have seen is the Prime Minister and the leader of the Liberal Party prove that he has been able to take that temperature down to allow the other conversations to take place.
Carl might not be convinced.
Well, it might not be Mark Carney. It might be Daniel Smith who finally got through the Trump Republicans and told Donald Trump to calm down to El Poilievre.
Or perhaps it was actually markets just like absolutely like blowing up and the U.S. economy risk cratering, right? Like,
or it was Mark.
That seems to be what actually pushed Trump back from the cliff.